Good evening, ladies.
Oh, hello.
I understand you've come to make some arrangements.
Arrangements? Is that what you call them?
Yes, well,
Yes, we are. Thank you for seeing us right away. We're so sorry for not calling first, but
it's no problem at all. My condolences for your loss.
thank you. We're all in shock, I guess. This is his mother.
I am so sorry. I know this is a terribly hard time, and if there's anything we can do.
It's very difficult. We've never done this before. It just seems so unreal.
Death can seem like that at times like this. It's something that's always so hard to cope with.
Set the standard line for a moment like this. It's true, I guess, but it's more than that. This was not some 90-year-old grandpa who died peacefully in his sleep surrounded by his family. This should never have happened.
Come on. Let's not make this harder than it is. Of course it shouldn't have happened, but it's not this man's fault.
Well, of course it's not his fault. But whose fault is it then?
You know.
Yeah, I know. There are villains all over this piece. The lawyers, the government, the crowds, even his own friends. But somehow, I have a feeling the guilt doesn't stop there. Maybe we all have some of his blood on our hands.
Don't talk that way. I'm terribly sorry. You have to understand that we are all upset. Have you ever been in a place in life where everything just falls apart and you have no idea why? When everything you believed, everything you thought you knew, just comes crashing down around you. And in one moment, all that's left are the arrangements.
Of course, moments like this are never easy, but I'll be happy to assist you with all of the, in any way I can. As you can see, we have a lot of options in terms of caskets that you can choose from. And of course, you'll want to talk about the service itself.
No, there will be no service. Absolutely not. I don't know who would come anyway. We just want this taken care of.
Oh, I see. Of course.
I'm sorry. It's just that this is such a shock. And given the circumstances, I think it might be best if we could just deal with this as quietly as possible.
The circumstances? So I assume this death was unexpected?
Oh, yes. No one saw this coming.
No, it wasn't.
Mary,
We all should have seen this coming and done something to stop it.
don't do this, please. Don't upset yourself even more.
No, she's right. We should have seen it coming. They should have seen it coming.
You're wrong. No one could have predicted.
Oh, come on. Even he knew it. You know, I think he saw it coming long before any of us did. Don't you remember from the moment he said he wanted to come here? It was like something changed in him. We were shocked, scared of what might happen, but looking back, I can see that he knew already. Oh, God, how it weighed on him. You could see it in his eyes.
I suppose you're right. He did seem to change, but I never knew why.
Well, maybe if we had looked closely enough, we would have. Maybe if we weren't so scared, wondering what was going to happen, we might have really seen him. Really seen him. There were moments these last few months when I would catch him staring off into the distance, kind of lost in himself. It was like something was pulling him. There was something deep inside. It was a sadness and yet a certainty as well. And now I realize what he was looking at. He was looking at this place. That terrible hill. And it changed him. It changed everything.
When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. and he sent messengers ahead of him. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him, but they did not receive him because his face was set toward Jerusalem.
Looking back at it now, it just seems unreal. You know, when this first started, it was easy. Sitting on the hillside, the sun was shining, the crowds were happy. They were hanging on his every word as he talked about love and forgiveness and...
Yeah. Love and forgiveness. You see where that all leads? Right here. And it all started when he decided he had to do this the hard way. When he flew into the face of those people.
No, that wasn't it. Believe me, I knew where it started long before that. I was there. It all seems like such a long time ago now, but somehow it's burned in my memory, and it all feels so very unreal.
Of course you remember.
I remember it all. The stable, the visitors, the stars shining in the darkness.
Oh, Mary.
Oh, but it didn't stop with the manger. I remember bath time, and his first step, and his first smile. Oh, and his gentleness. Oh, and there was something different about him. I know every mother says that about their oldest, but there was something powerful and awesome and a little bit frightening. A love of him that just, it came from somewhere else.
Am I the only one who sees the bitter irony and that it all ends here? All that love, all that kindness. Where did it land him? On a hill, about 2 miles from here. That's where it ends? We should have never left Galilee. He should have never pushed his luck.
But that's the point.
What do you mean?
All of his life, there was something there, playing in the background. Oh, it was like a soundtrack that only he could hear. But there were moments when I would catch just a note now and then. It was like deep inside of him, there was something else there forming from the very beginning. Something breathtaking, and terrifying. He was different than the other children. I may have been his mother, but he was never really mine or any of ours. He took that first step. Like any mother, I was delighted, but what I didn't understand are that those first steps, those very first steps, would lead him here to this.
But why? What was the grand purpose? What was his point?
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't his purpose at all. Maybe his meaning came from somewhere else or something else.
Indeed, who would ever believe it? Who would possibly accept what we've been told? Who has witnessed the awesome power and plan of the eternal in action? Out of emptiness he came, like a tender shoot from rock-hard ground. He didn't look like anything or anyone of consequence. He had no physical beauty to attract our attention. So he was despised and forsaken by men, this man of suffering, grief's patient friend. As if he was a person to avoid, we looked the other way. He was despised, forsaken, and we took no notice of him. Yet it was our suffering he carried, our pain and distress, our sick to the soulness. We just figured that God had rejected him, that God was the reason he hurt so badly. But he was hurt because of us. He suffered so. Our wrongdoing wounded and crushed him. He endured the breaking that made us whole. The injuries he suffered became our healing. We all have wandered off, like shepherdless sheep, scattered by our aimless striving and endless pursuits. The Eternal One laid on him, this silent sufferer, the sins of us all.
Please, I know we're all upset, but we can't take up this gentleman's time.
So it was him. Well, of course, there are some things we have to decide. Are you sure you're going to want some obituary, some public notice?
No, I don't think that will be necessary.
Trust me, everybody knows.
Yes, well, given the circumstances, that might be best. And you're sure you don't want any public service?
No, absolutely not. Don't you get it? He had his public service. The public has spoken, and they paid him their honor when they stuck him up there on that tree.
Please don't be so bitter.
Bitter? You saw what they did to him. They poured out their hate and their venom on him.
Yes, I saw it. I was there. This isn't easy on any of us, you know. I loved him too. He was the one who lifted me up out of the dirt when I needed it. And he saw in me something I never dared see in myself. Not from any man, not from anyone. I remembered that day. All my life I was an outcast. All my life. When people looked at me, all they saw was another bit of trash to be used and thrown away. It was when he first saw me, he looked and I saw something reflected in his eyes, a value, a meaning. It was terrifying, but it was hopeful in a way I had never felt before. Have you ever felt like there's no way that you can move forward in your life? Like all you see are dead ends? And in one moment, he changed all of that for me. Maybe that was the start. Maybe that was the end. Maybe I'm the one that started it.
And it came to pass, when Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, "Not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people." Now, while Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were angry and said, "Why this waste? For this ointment could have been sold for a large sum and the money given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service for me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her." Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver, and from that moment he began to look for an opportunity to betray him.
So that's how it started? A friend?
A friend. Some friend.
But everything changed after that. You know, we all knew it. He knew it. You could tell.
Oh, it wore on him. It was like very deep inside. Every step he took was drawing him closer to something he didn't want to do. yet somehow he knew he had to. Oh, he still talked about love and forgiveness, but now there was something else there too, something dark.
Yeah, he started to talk more and more about death, sacrifice, and the cost of it all. And it changed everything. It was like the sun was still shining, but the warmth was gone. And in the distance, you could hear a storm brewing.
Couldn't he have stopped it? Couldn't you?
No. Somehow it all felt inevitable.
It was like he was on a train headed for a cliff, and he was the only one who saw it coming, but he couldn't get off.
Or he wouldn't. We didn't understand it at the time, but somehow we all felt it.
And so did they. The crowds, I mean. That kind of talk doesn't set well with most people, I can tell you. Oh, they still followed us as we slowly moved toward town. But there was something different in the air, something in them and maybe in us too. It just seemed a little bit hollow. You could see it in their faces. They still looked like they were listening. They nodded in the right places and they smiled, but it was just wrong. It didn't seem right. You could see he wasn't giving them what they wanted, even if he was giving them what they needed.
And from that moment on, the welcome was gone.
No, not quite, not completely gone.
What do you mean?
It was that day we went into town.
Oh, yeah. Let's not forget that little farce.
Oh, it wasn't a farce. You know, at least it didn't seem that way at the time. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, and the people were cheering.
Yeah, funny how cheers of welcome can turn to screams for blood, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, there's no point.
Oh, yes, there is. In fact, that might be the only point out of this whole nightmare. The great punchline to that grim cosmic joke. Those people who were jeering and cheering him, they're the same ones who were cheering him as king just a week ago. Isn't that a great irony? As far as jokes go, that one's a killer.
Stop it, please. This isn't getting us anywhere.
No, she's right. I saw them too. Those faces. They were cheering a week ago, and now they're jeering and ugly. And those hands with the branches, those were the same hands that beat, that crucified my boy. Oh, God, my boy.
When they had come near Jerusalem and had reached Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, just say this, 'The Lord needs them,' and he will send them immediately." This took place to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet, saying, "Tell the daughter of Zion, look, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey and a colt, the foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt, and they put their cloaks on them, and he sat on them. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and that followed were shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest heaven!" When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was in turmoil, asking, "Who is this?"
It all seems so long ago now, and it's only been a week. That day we rode into town, in that moment, for the first time, I thought everything was going to be all right again. I dared to believe that maybe things were going to come out okay. For the first time in such a long while, it all seemed to make sense once again.
We didn't know.
But maybe we should have. Maybe even then we should have known that it would all come down, I don't know, to this.
It was easy. Too easy, I remember.
What?
I beg your pardon?
Nothing at all. I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, you're right. It was too easy to trust them, to trust him, to trust those people waving the branches and calling him king.
But it wasn't easy for long.
Well, let's be honest. He didn't exactly help himself.
Oh, stop.
I'm sorry, Mary, but somebody has to say it. From the moment we got here, he was out there rattling cages. That little demonstration he put on in the temple, great bit of drama that caused. Calling the religious leaders a brood of vipers? Come on, he was courting trouble the whole time. Whether he knew it or not, he was racking up a bill that was going to come due a whole lot sooner than any of us knew.
But maybe we didn't know it, but he did. He knew and he understood, and that hurts me worse than anything. He knew. Don't you see? That's what he was trying to tell us.
On that night, having supper with his friends.
Yes, even then he knew. He understood, and all he had to give was love. Maybe he was trying to tell us that there's more to this than some random set of events. Maybe he was trying to show us that everything he'd done was coming down to this. This is what was going to happen. And this is what's going to happen in the future.
Sorry, Mary, but I'm not buying it. It didn't have to be this way. He could have gotten up, he could have walked out, could have hightailed it out of town, and we'd all be safe in the countryside right about now.
But don't you see? That's what he was trying to say. It seems a little bit clearer to me now that I can look back on it. This was his choice, to give himself, to give all of himself.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
When it was evening, he took his place with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they became greatly distressed and began to say to him one after another, "Surely not I, Lord." He answered, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to that one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." He replied, "You have said so." While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never again drink of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung the hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives.
Look, we need to make some plans.
Yes, well, as a start, is there anyone that can help you make any decisions? Are there any relatives or perhaps friends that you would like us to notify?
I don't think so.
Friends? Do you see any friends out here? No. They seem to be conspicuously absent right about now.
No one is available.
No, there you go, sugarcoating it again. Let's be honest. You know what they did. We all know what they did.
Yes, of course. We all know.
They ran away. When he needed them most, they all ran.
Scattered like sheep. And that's all they were. That's all they ever were.
No, they were good men.
How can you say that? They were the ones he loved the most. The men who swore they would stick by him till the end. But then in the garden, when he needed them most, they ran for their lives and left him there.
Alone.
Alone.
Well, maybe they didn't have a choice.
What?
You know, Maybe they were just doing what they had to do. Look, it's easy in the sunshine to make promises to something or to someone, but when your life is on the line,
There are always choices. We could have, they could have.
And he knew that too. He knew that. He even said that one of them would deny him, one of them would betray him. He knew, and he still made his choice.
Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and began to be grieved and agitated. Then he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me." And going a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So you could not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again he went away for the 2nd time and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd with swords and clubs, from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given him a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
They ran away, all of them.
They made their choice. He made his choice. The world made its choice. And now all we're left with is, what did you call it? The arrangements? Just tidying up that last bit of rubble from the destruction those choices made.
Look, not that it concerns you.
no, it does.
They arrested him, took him away. There was a trial.
A trial? Is that what you want to call it? The verdict was decided before they ever started.
The verdict was decided long before that.
And it all went downhill from there. They took him and they beat him.
Okay, let's not relive this, shall we? I mean, especially in front of Mary.
No, she's right. I saw it too. They took my son. They beat him. They reduced him to human rubble. They took away every last bit of humanity he had.
The priests, the soldiers.
Yes. But let's not stop there. It was the men who ran away when he needed them most. It was the crowd who called him king. It was all of them.
And maybe all of us.
And that wasn't even the worst part. Not for me, anyway. The worst part was when they had done their worst, their very worst. He looked at them, and all he had to give was love.
And those are the ones he looked at. He looked at them and he said, "Father, forgive them."
Father, forgive them? Yeah, that's a nice thought. And God might forgive those butchers, but I never will.
But don't you see? Maybe that's what this is all about. Maybe that's what it's always been about. Forgiveness. Maybe from the very beginning this is all about forgiveness.
Please don't upset yourself.
Upset myself? That was my son up there on that cross. That was my flesh and blood that was spilled today. I can't forgive them either. I can't forgive any of them. But maybe that's the whole point of this. Because I also saw something else. Oh, I saw that this is where those very first steps led him. Everything he had done, everything he was, led him to this. Look, I don't understand, but I know that it's true. This is something that he wanted to do. No, this is the purpose of who he was. I can't forgive them. I can't forgive any of them. But he could, because forgiveness comes from somewhere else.
But there has to be a point to all of this.
A point? A point? Don't you get it? The point is that there is no point. There's no punchline to this story. There's no happy ending here. You heard what he said. It is finished. Done. Over. He's dead. His God is dead. And maybe that's why I feel so dead inside. Nothing good ever comes from this. What good could come from a crucifixion? Look, maybe it was a mistake coming here. We should go.
No, please.
I think she's right. To be honest, we don't even have the money to pay for this.
I'm sure there was something that we can do.
No, we never should have bothered you.
I was there. I did this.
What are you saying?
You were what?
I was there. When you rode into town, I was curious. I'd heard of him before, followed what was going on, and even, talked to some of the people that had heard and followed him in the early days. And I was intrigued. No, it was more than that. It made sense. I guess somehow I'd always wanted to believe that there was more to life, more to God than this. I wanted to believe that there was something more that would ends up in this place. And I was there. And maybe I cheered. Maybe I cheered too. I didn't intend to. It was just so easy. But then I caught myself. After all, I'm someone with a reputation to protect. An upstanding man of the community. It wouldn't look right for a businessman, a member of the Jewish council to...
A member of the council?
Yes. I followed the reports on him. I even heard the rumors of what they had in mind. That night they took him to the temple. I heard what they did, what we did. And I guess it just made me sick. I didn't dare say anything. All I could think of was my reputation. I could have spoken up. I could have defended him. All I could do was think of my reputation with the council. God. But when they took him away to the governor, I turned and I went home. I just didn't want to see what was coming. And in that moment, I didn't want to be any part of it. I didn't want to have any part of anything.
So you knew.
And you did nothing.
Yeah. Is that so hard to believe? After all, I'm only human.
Oh, we're all only human. That's the problem.
And perhaps that's the point.
This one thought, it haunts me. When he was up there, what he said about forgiveness, is it possible he was talking more than just to the people that were standing there? Is it possible it was meant for even me? Me, the one who ran away. Me, the one who betrayed him. Me, the one who stood there and did nothing while he did all of this for me.
Look, we can't help you with your guilt. We've got our own problems to deal with.
I can do something.
Wait, what do you mean? What can you do?
I have some pull with the authorities. I can get the body released to me.
But we have no place to put it.
My wife and I, we have a tomb. We bought it, well, we can put him there, but it'll have to be quick, before anybody notices. After all, I have a reputation to protect, but there are still some things that will have to be done.
What sorts of things?
Well, the body's going to have to be wrapped and some chemicals applied. I can provide them, but somebody, you, are going to have to apply them, put them on. But you should wait maybe 2 or 3 days.
My God, you can't be asking us to.
No, that's okay. We can do this. This will be fine.
But how would we even get in? I mean, who will open a tomb after 3 days?
We'll find a way. I got this. It's the least I can do.
Maybe God will provide a way.
I'm sorry. There is nothing more I can do.
Yeah, you have a reputation to protect. After all, you're only human.
Thank you. We don't care why you're doing this. We are just so grateful to get it done, mister.
Just call me Joseph. God go with you, ladies.
God go with all of us.
God only knows how all this will end.
So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross by himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side, with Jesus between them. Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. After this, when Jesus knew that all was now finished, he said, in order to fulfill Scripture, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was standing there, so they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. When the evening was come, there came a rich man of Arimathea named Joseph, who also himself was Jesus' disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the door of the grave and departed.